And all of a sudden I heard like a roar, and I went in there and the baby was crowning. And it was almost like she needed that, I trust you, let you do your own, let you work through some of this on your own.
I was at a weird point in life where I just hadn't felt much of anything for a while. And so I was really scared of just not being emotionally present. And what's one of the most amazing things you feel like you've seen a female body do?
Oh my goodness.
This is episode 5 of the Lifted Spirits podcast, where we raise some glasses, share encouraging stories and thoughts, and discuss how we find meaning through family, friendship, art, career, and everything in between. Today we have Phoebe Granderson, who is a midwife. A lot of people don't even know what a midwife is or what they do, and she helped us deliver our second baby, and so she has plenty to say about the business of being born.
So we're rolling. This
All
is,
right.
You can introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm Phoebe Granderson. I'm a certified nurse midwife. Yeah, I live in Rogers, and I own a practice with my nurse midwife partner, Candace Colleen, Eden Birth and Wellness. We're in downtown Rogers.
And
That's who I am.
help people give birth.
Yes, sure do. Yeah.
Which, thanks for coming too. I just
Thank you.
reached out to several people, and my cycle of people that I've wanted to interview, it's not a hard line, but I thought interview an artisty person, like a musician or a painter, interview a businessy person, and then interview a like a priest or pastor type person, trying to find common threads of how people find meaning, or just spiritual leader, psychologist, self-help type person. Yeah. And I already did an artist and a business person, and I thought a midwife is kind of a spiritual leader, like not in a hokey way, but it's literally humans coming into existence. That's pretty hard to beat as far as that. So I view you as a spiritual elder of sorts. That's the role you're filling today. And why don't you just share a broad overview of your background and your story, who you are, how you came to be in this practice?
Yeah. So I've always wanted to be a nurse, even when I was really little. So I actually grew up overseas, for the most part in South Korea, spent some time in China too. Went to nursing school at Cox College of Nursing in Springfield, so I have some roots kind of in the area. And then went on to work long-term care for just a short time. I thought I was going to be a peds nurse when I went into school, and didn't care for it much afterwards. And then I started in labor and delivery in Los Angeles in a hospital there. Just kind of happened, like just went to a job fair. Was like, hey, I'll take whatever you got.
Yeah.
Now that would make people jealous because it's hard to get into L&D sometimes, but back then not so much. This was way back in 2000, so it was a long time ago. And then ended up working there, loving it, worked there for almost 7 years. And then have worked other places off and on over the years. I have 4 children. I'm very proud of them. I have 22 all the way down to 13. So, took some time off here and there to be a stay-at-home mom, but just kind of kept that common thread of moms and babies all through the years. And, worked in a county hospital in Oklahoma for a while, and worked in a military hospital in Korea, and worked in lots of different settings. And then just after a number of years, I, started doing like childbirth education and doula work, and you wanted to kind of do things a little bit differently than what I was doing in the hospital. So really wanted to get more into being able to help women before they showed up in labor and delivery, and do things in a more holistic way. So went back to school to be a nurse midwife. And when I got out of school, then there were no nurse midwife jobs in Northwest Arkansas. So I started working for a birth center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I just loved it. And after working there for a couple of years, then I was able to open a practice here in Northwest Arkansas. I actually had to wait until we passed a law to change some things for nurse midwives in Arkansas. And then we were able to open a practice and 2.5 years later, here we are. Yes.
Yeah.
It was very complicated.
Yeah, which also, we've got this Seedlip. They do a lot of neat non-alcoholic spirits. This one's kind of spicy. I'm pour myself some. You're welcome to.
Yes, I was excited because I can drink this when I'm on call. I spend a bit of time on call.
Yeah, that's the fun thing. But then the dangerous thing is you can drink it anytime, so you can wake up in the morning and be like, I could have some in the morning too, and it's not going to hurt. But yeah, I really like aromatic things, or whatever the word is.
It tastes like it's got like essential oils or something in there.
Yeah, as I'm coffee. I just went down the wrong pipe.
It tastes like something that would be good for you, honestly.
Yeah, I would think so, because it's all these distilled botanicals and whatnot. Sounds pretty fancy. I'm just a guy. I don't know any of the science or whatnot, but I'm pretty sure it's good for you. And then why don't you just share too, like, what is a midwife? Because not everybody is even super familiar with what you do.
I know. It's so funny because sometimes either people think that we're just kind of show up at a birth with like a towel and a prayer, or they're like, there's still midwives, like you guys aren't. Anyway, it's very close to witchcraft. I'm kidding. Well, a midwife, the word actually means with woman. And so I think that's a very good description. So we're with women in prenatal care and before they have the baby, when they're having the baby, postpartum after they're having the baby, and then also taking care of the newborn. And then nurse midwives, we have a broader role too, because we're actually like nurse practitioners that can deliver babies. So we have the same like advanced practice nurse license. So we do primary care, we do some infertility and PAPs, and we can order your antibiotics or stuff if you need it. We always do like holistic things first, but there's a pretty broad range of what we can do. We can take care of women all the way from, like teenagers all the way up through menopause. Yeah, and newborns.
Yeah. I'm always super impressed when I hear from midwives, because there's just so much medical knowledge of all sorts of fields, both of just the more natural holistic stuff, and then also knowing like, hey, we need to go to the hospital, that having the
knowing where the light is.
Knowing all of the ins and outs. Whereas a lot of times at the hospital, there's not any common sense, you want to say, of like, whereas midwives think, let's use common sense first, and then if we need to rush to some sort of pill or surgery for something, like that's what it's for, but you don't just need to jump straight there. What will you say are some of the main reasons that people choose to have a midwife or do a home birth as opposed to in the hospital?
Well, actually, most nurse midwives work in the hospital, so they can work in the hospital as well. But a lot of us work in out-of-hospital care. So what was the question? What
are reasons people would have a midwife outside of the hospital?
Yeah. So I've seen so many different reasons. To be honest, sometimes people choose us because we're less expensive. I mean, let's be honest. But sometimes they've had like some kind of traumatic experience in the hospital, or they, maybe not even related to birth. A lot of people just want to be at home. They want to sleep in their own bed. They want to be comfortable. They just think that they'd be able to, just relax more in their own home. They don't want to go anywhere in labor. Sometimes if people have had a few babies already, then they're like, I just don't want to be, I've had people hire us more for the postpartum care because we do 5 postpartum visits, and we actually come to you for at least the first 3. So then you don't have to get the baby out. We're going to come to your house and take care of you. So there's like a ton of reasons. Some people have more, they want to have a more spiritual experience at home and just think that their wishes would be more respected and be able to do more of those things there. Some people feel like they might be judged for like lifestyle choices or things like that, whether or not that would be true in the hospital. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of reasons.
Yeah. It seems like anything in the medical world can be luck of the draw of who's your nurse or doctor on shift, because a lot of them can have so many different perspectives on how to approach things. And
exactly.
and I think both Alexa and I, my wife, we're the kind of people who really want to trust medical professionals, but then they make it really hard sometimes. Like at our first kid was born, we were in the hospital. That's a whole story we can get into later. But a doctor came in and told us, just make sure that the child doesn't get exposure to direct sunlight for the first several months of life. And we said, oh, you just mean don't leave the baby out in the sun so he won't get sunburned. She's like, no, you don't want any direct sunlight. And we were really confused, and we kept asking her different ways, like, you can't be saying that. And I feel like no one would have believed us unless my mom was in the room there with us and she heard it all. And I thought, this is a doctor telling me the weirdest thing. And I don't know if it's some sort of legality thing of you just have to say this, but like, it doesn't make sense. And I almost just wanted to tell her, like, hey, look, let's strip away your job title, and I just need you to look at my face person to person and tell me that's nonsense. And I didn't, but maybe next time. But it's those sorts of things where it's like, I want to trust professionals, but I almost see more professionalism from people who are like doing alternative practices at times. And sorry, were you saying?
No, not at all. I think... I think like you were saying earlier, it's really crucial to know where the kind of the lines are. Like what is, because, like you guys are the parents, you know your own body, just respecting that autonomy and your own instincts and you knowing yourself. And that's so important to really listen and like get to know your clients and get to know their families. I mean, we go into your home. We do have a lot of the visits in our office, but we get to know you. We're there. I mean, we get to know your pets and your family members. So then we really, it builds that trust and that knowledge of each other. So then if I am, if we're talking to each other, we're not like missing the communication. Like I'm not understanding what you're telling me. It's a little bit when that bond is there and that trust is built, then I think that's really, really important. So then if I say, hey, I really do think this needs to be, taken into the hospital or something, then you're like, oh, okay. Like I trust that. Or if the mom's saying like, hey, I need you to trust me that this is what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the most part, then I think that really matters so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And first off, how many approximately births have you presided over?
I know, we try not to say delivered because I'm like, honestly, I mean, you guys made the baby, you grew the baby, you're having the baby. I'm here for safety at the end of the day. But, really my role is not you deliver the baby, I catch the baby. So I honestly wish I had an exact answer. It's over 100 and it's not as many as like someone who's been is in the hospital and delivering multiple babies every day, because we do follow them all the way through. And then we only do take about 6 due dates per month, just to make sure we're still able to give that kind of care, really that deep, meaningful care. I've delivered several as a labor and delivery nurse over the years, and then, clinicals, and then in the birth center, and then at home. Yeah.
And out of those stories, what are a few that just come to your head that were very special or meaningful to you?
Oh gosh, when you ask me that question, I'm like,
I know it's such a big question because I'm sure there's so many, but just a few.
Well, I was thinking about the first delivery that I ever did, and then I mean, probably there's one that really sticks out in my head from recently. The first delivery I ever did was actually, now it's quite humorous. Back then it was not to me. But it was when I was a nurse. I was a pretty new labor and delivery nurse, and I had a mom who didn't speak English. And, we were figuring it out. We had the translator. But she was about 8 centimeters. I stepped out of the room to call the doctor, which was, that's how I learned you don't do that. I stepped back in and she said, I think something came out. And the baby was born. It was in the bed. It was fine. Everything was fine.
Oh.
It scared me, but I do think I was a very young labor and delivery nurse, but I really learned that I get to be there and I get to, I think through the safety around the situation, but I'm really a frill. Let's be honest. Like I said, the mom is the one having the baby. It's about her. I'm there to help and to assist, but I'm not the central person in this story.
Yeah.
So, but another birth I did recently, there was first-time moms. They, typically will have a much longer labor. And there was a mom that she had a long labor, not terribly long for a first-time mom, but, we did all the things and the back massage and, different positions and, getting in the shower, out of the shower. And finally, I just looked at her and I said, I think you need a break or something to that effect. And I just had this feeling like she just needed us to step away. And so I said, you guys just lay down in the bed and we'll be out here if you need us. And I think it was only about 20 minutes. It was before we needed to listen to the baby's heartbeat again. And all of a sudden I heard like a roar and I went in there and the baby was crowning. And it was almost like she needed that, I trust you, let you do your own, let you work through some of this on your own. She had the baby. That was really cool.
Wow.
And then I've also had another one that I thought of was a mom. We're starting to get repeat clients now. We're getting, this practice has been around, like I said, for a couple of years. So now we're getting parents coming back and having their second or, third or whatever. And this is a repeat client too. And her first labor was fairly long. And her second one, she called us, and I think her spouse, often will have the spouse will call and say, she says she doesn't need you, but I think you should come. And sure enough, she's like, I'm sorry, we got you here too soon. It's fine. Everything's fine. And she had that baby within an hour of me getting there. And she was still in disbelief. Like, she was in hands and knees. Most of my moms deliver in hands and knees. If you just leave a pregnant laboring mom alone to deliver, they will usually go in hands and knees or squatting. And she kept looking at me over her shoulder and saying, am I really having the baby? And I said, yeah, your body's doing it. But she was just in so much disbelief that the second baby came that quick and easily. And
for Alexa's first birth, I remember the first thing she said, it was a while because we were just in the moment. But then when she came to herself more, she said, that wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. I thought, wow, that's pretty hardcore.
I've heard that, yeah.
And I have no experience. I was just glad that I was conscious. I was not expecting to be, I'm not good with blood and that sort of thing. So I was fully prepared to just be out cold. But it must have been the adrenaline just helped me go.
You hear about that, but the dads rise to the occasion. They do. I've only had one, I think, pass out, and he hadn't eaten all day or something silly like that. Yeah.
I had another emergency situation years ago where a friend had cut his finger really bad, and it was, pretty much clean off, and it was blood everywhere, and I had to drive him to the hospital, and because I was the only person around, and I was about to white out all the time, so at every stoplight I'd have to lean back in my chair and do deep breathing and say, I'm so sorry. I know you're the one who's suffering here. But I got him there eventually, and it all worked out.
Yeah.
And which quick thought on something you had said of, I forget all the details, but you talked about squatting and hands and knees. Is that, I've heard that being on your back is a sort of counterintuitive way to give birth, which would make sense because the gravity's against you. But why don't you explain?
There's a lot of things that we just do differently in out of hospital birth. I think the hospitals are changing some things too. So,
which, first off, do you know why that's the practice?
I have heard that it goes back a couple hundred years, more than that, probably like 200 or 300 years, to some doctor that just, it was easier for him and he liked that for some reason. And it was seen as being like more delicate and, So I don't know. I mean, it's for the convenience of the provider. I have to say at this point, I've done so many births on the hands and knees that every once in a while I'll have a mom will go on her back or in a different position. And it kind of throws me off just a little. And it's funny, I feel good about that because all through those years in labor and delivery, then almost everyone was on their back or semi-reclining or something. And so I think it kind of threw me off the first time I did a hands and knees delivery.
Yeah.
And now I'm so used to it. But yeah, there's so many things in labor that if you just let the mom, we tell them, hey, you do what your body's telling you to do. You listen to your body, and they usually will go hands and knees. And if you think about it, it has less tearing that way. There's less pressure. So hands and knees and on your side are the least likely to tear. And it's just instinctive. And even a couple interesting things I had never known. And I mean, I worked with laboring women for years and years and years. And I didn't know until I worked in out-of-hospital birth that if you have someone on their hands and knees, you can watch the sacrum bulge, like where the baby's head is coming down. And you can see that line, like the purple line going up. And there's a lot of ways you can tell that someone is close to giving birth without doing a vaginal exam.
Wow.
I mean, we'll do a vaginal exam if, we usually do one or, if we see some reason and, ask the mom if it's okay. But it's just amazing all the other things that are there when you just leave women alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is kind of personal, so you can answer it as much or as little as you want. But with your own births, do you have any of them more significant? Obviously, they were all significant, but anything about the births themselves that you'd like to elaborate on?
About me giving birth?
Yeah.
Well, my births are not what you would expect from a nurse midwife. I actually had 3 C-sections, 2 emergency C-sections, and then a scheduled one. And then my youngest was adopted. So I feel like that kind of keeps me humble in some ways because, I needed a C-section and I had one, and I'm always very thankful for the larger medical community, and we do our best to work really well with them, with some of the hospitals here. And they've been very kind to us and very, open and receptive. And, but yeah, I had chorioamnionitis twice, and then had the third scheduled C-section. So, and this was way, 20 plus years ago, when having a VBAC was very difficult to get anyone to, allow, quote unquote, you to try to do a VBAC. So I was even glad I got to attempt a VBAC with my second. And for a number of years, I thought about being a nurse midwife for quite a while before I went back to school. And part of it was I thought I don't have the birth story for it. I don't have I gave
the
birth
origin
with
story.
With dolphins in a lagoon or something. I had C-sections. And but when I did some doula work, my first doula client, she was having a scheduled C-section, and I don't remember why, but she'd had some life-threatening, like it was a very good reason for a C-section. And she was terrified of the OR, of getting her spinal, and she wanted a doula for that. And I felt like that was kind of the universe's way of telling me, hey, you have something to give. You still have something to offer. And I was like, man, I've circulated, I don't know how many C-sections, and had a couple myself. So I can help you with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is it about midwifery? Like, what's your why? Why do you do it? What sort of meaning do you get from it?
I think it is a very spiritual experience to me in some ways. And I love working with people, and I love working with women. And I think, usually people will tell you, oh, you get to play with babies or hold babies all day. We actually, if everything goes to plan, I get to hold babies very little. Sometimes I'll ask if I can hold the baby, like at the last postpartum appointment. But you do it because you love women. Yeah. And I love getting to know their stories, getting to know them, being of service in their lives. Yeah.
And what's one of the most amazing things you feel like you've seen a female body do?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I think it's amazing every time. It really is. I mean, they can grow this baby and birth the baby and feed the baby with their milk, sustain the baby completely for, I mean, at least a year afterwards. I mean, the whole process is just absolutely amazing. The more you learn about birth, the more you're like, wow, this is like a miracle every time. It really is. And then just watching women do what comes naturally. I mean, sure, I keep encouraging women, hey, keep eating and drinking through labor. And, sometimes they don't feel like it or whatever. But for the most part, just really helping them to trust their body and trust the process.
And are there any lesser known facts about birth or midwifery that just the average Joe wouldn't know that you think they should?
Yeah. Well, that we do go to school and we do, nurse midwives have a master's in midwifery. I think in Arkansas, sometimes I bump up against that a little more. So maybe I want to put that public service announcement out there. Because I do often have people say, well, do you know how to, take care of a baby if it comes out not breathing or, like, yes, yes, I do. Do you take any medicine? Like, what if they bleed? And I'm like, oh my goodness, we bring 3 lines of anti-hemorrhage medication. And, that we do have all of these things. We don't often use them. Usually we, have it stays in the kit. But we train very hard for all the emergencies. And even in our own team, I have 4 nurses and, we train every month or 2 and, we keep up with all of that. So, and the nurse midwives can see women across the life spectrum, not just for having babies, and see people for lots of things.
Yeah. And what's one of the most maybe unexplainable things you've seen at a birth where it maybe seemed like something was going one way, but then it happened another way? I don't know.
I've seen some pretty different things. Sometimes birth will really surprise you. Like you're think, man, this is like taking forever. And then all of a sudden, like they'll just have the baby. Or one time I had someone that her birth really slowed down, like right at the end. And it was her 3rd, I think. And I was like, what's going on here? And then she just squatted down beside her bed and had like a 10-pound, 5-ounce baby. Still the biggest. And it was great. Like she did fine. And she was not super tiny, but I mean, not a big person. So sometimes you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some sad situations, for sure. Midwifery and labor and delivery is happy until it's not, and then it's really sad. But there's also been, I think one of the craziest, well, I have a lot of crazy stories. I've worked with a lot of different cultures over the years. Like we had a lot of Muslim clients and Persian clients and Hispanic and Italian when I was in Los Angeles, in that area I worked in. I've worked with a lot of Korean women, of course, and we serve a lot of Amish people here in Northwest Arkansas as well. So it's really neat to see the different cultures and kind of how it plays into the birth and the things that are similar and the things that are different.
I've got I fit in right with the Amish because they do the whole shave the mustache, and people ask all the time, why do you just shave your mustache? I'm like, I don't. I'm just Irish and it doesn't grow on my face. Just got the neck beard.
There you go.
Leprechaun chin strap.
There you go. And it's really fun how similar we are, how like we really bond over, it's neat when you're the midwife because you kind of have an in, like you're sort of part of the family a little bit sooner. You don't have to, you're just welcomed into a pretty intimate experience in someone's life. But I remember when she started pushing, she turned around and yelled at me, "Pull my hair." And I was like, what? She said, "Pull my hair right now." And so I did. This is very early. I started labor and delivery when I was like 21 years old, I think. And so I reached up and I like kind of tugged her hair and she's like, harder. And every time she'd have a contraction, she'd tell me, pull my hair harder, harder. And I was like, oh my gosh. I looked at the doctor and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And later, now I realize this was making, it was like distracting from the pain, but I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to like lose my job over this or something.
Yeah.
You want to pull your hair? What's going on? But another really, this is not a crazy story, it's a fun story, but one of the first delivery we did with this practice, it's this, oh my goodness, she had this beautiful, very fast delivery. And we came out of the room where she had had the baby and her family had made this spread. All kinds of cheeses, all kinds of meats, like little fancy coffee. It was just amazing. And I was like, okay, we can't get used to this. This is not going to be the typical thing. But it was just so like, it was like God was telling us, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
That was just amazing. And some of the prenatal visits and things like that I do are some of my favorite things about being a nurse midwife, honestly. Like, we do home visits every Wednesday. I get to drive all over Northwest Arkansas, especially in the fall and spring. That's just gorgeous. And we're talking about the Amish clients. I've had them like give me rides across muddy fields and,
And a carriage, right?
No, in a four-wheeler, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then, just one time I was at their house and it started storming and, they give you a rain slicker to make it out to the car. And just, going up to Eureka Springs and all the way down to Siloam and getting to know people all over the place. And it's just like, what's not to love? It really is, I was really fortunate.
Yeah. And as far as every birth is obviously very intimate and special, are there any particularly intimate births that you recall where maybe you were brought to tears yourself?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about, I've had some births where it was a very redemptive experience. Like maybe they'd had something really difficult or, a history of abuse or something like that. And having the baby, like I recall this one woman, she gave birth and she was able, we don't always know what's going to happen in a birth. Sometimes everything goes the way it's going to, and sometimes it doesn't. But I remember she gave birth and just, bringing the baby up onto her chest. It's always a very emotional moment. But for her, you could just see how she was just sobbing and how it had, like, being able to trust her body again and to be naked and have it be a safe space, and that she had had that autonomy and she had had the support and the trust. It was very healing. And that'll bring you to tears. Or a rainbow baby, maybe they'd had a loss before, and then being able to have another baby after that. That's really beautiful as well. I took care of a client that had had a really traumatic stillbirth previously. This was in Oklahoma, and she was able to just have this beautiful birth, just how she wanted it. And that was a very healing, very coming full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or one really special thing is if you help someone with infertility and then they get pregnant and then they have the baby.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I bet.
Yeah.
And we already talked about things that just most people wouldn't know about birth or midwifery, but what about specific things that the average man should know but probably does not?
Start?
Yeah. Now entering the second hour.
Yes. Well, the partners are always really involved in a home birth. So, there are some partners that are more involved than others, but overall, we will generally really involve you in the process. So I would say, really, for anyone at a birth, then it's, you always focus on the mom. I think sometimes people think the focus will be more on the baby. But yeah, going with what she wants to do, the dads are usually right there, and we will, get you squeezing their hips together, or, helping them with counter pressure. Sometimes we'll, you know, tell you guys to go cuddle in bed, get some natural oxytocin rolling,
Yeah.
things like that. And then I think sometimes transition and the actual birth is a lot more emotional for partners than they think it's going to be. And I've seen a lot of partners tear up right there. And I think too, if you've had a hospital birth and then you have a home birth, I mean, it really depends on the hospital, of course. But sometimes it's a lot more. I've had it almost worry people in the birth room because it's not super noisy. I mean, sometimes the mom is making some noise, but we're kind of chill. There's not really, a reason to. I'm not going to count for you to push, or like, we're ready. Well, hey, you're doing great. Trust your body. We're here. But yeah, it might look different.
Yeah, sure. Every birth is wildly different.
And if you're going to have a water birth, figure out how to hook up the hose before.
Yes.
Before the birth.
I don't think I'd even mentioned, but she helped deliver our second baby, or whatever the term was. Preside. Alexis delivered it.
Yes.
But, and which our first birth was a crazy story too. So first, this was maybe 2 weeks before the birth. I forget if Alexa mentioned this to you, but she had this dream that she could take the baby out of her womb and hold it, and saw that it was a boy, which, that's a 50-50 guess. But and then she thought, oh, I should put him back in or he's going to get cold. And then we have the home birth, and everything went fine. And right before the midwives are leaving, several hours after the birth, his temperature just started plummeting. Like, it got down to 93, and we had to rush him to the ER. And so I felt so awful, because I haven't just delivered my first child, and that whole experience, and Alexa's getting wheeled in and not knowing if things are okay, and they eventually stabilized him, and they never found out what was wrong, and he's been fine since. But we were in there for 3 days, and but I just thought it was that motherly intuition is wild. I'm a kind of skeptical and cynical person, and but just the direct, like, knowing something about his temperature and being too cold, that sort of stuff blows my mind.
Well, and I tell you, if someone tells you they're going to have a baby, they usually are. I hear people say, oh, I was trying to tell people the baby's about to come, and people didn't believe me. And I'm like, that is rule one. If someone says the baby's coming out, it usually is. But yeah, that intuition, really listening. And I know that the partners always get more into all the practical things, because, the mom is working hard. She's laboring. So things like, we'll help you with the, getting the bed situated, and we'll stay and clean everything up, and, do the laundry, and, pump all the water back out of the pool and take it all down. And
I remember having to do planks on her back, getting my feet on the couch, and
she did really need help with her back.
And we have some good pictures of that. And I always jokingly reference that of just, how hard I worked during the birth. And, it was a tough time, but I made it through. And but which one final thought on that. I remember being because we got to be with the Ronald McDonald House in the hospital, and we were only there for 3 days, and there were families there for 6, 9 months, however long, and I just thought, wow, that was just 3 days, and it was so intense, and I can't even imagine how there's families who go through things like that, what feels like indefinitely, and just that it's great that something like that exists.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, the Ronald McDonald House and NICU teams, it's amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So apart from your work, what are things in your life that you feel like you really derive meaning and purpose from? I'm sure it overlaps, but not just, sometimes you're not just a midwife.
Yeah. No.
You do lots of other things. And
Yeah.
so what are just things in life that you feel like really make it worthwhile for you?
Well, I have a really big family that I love very much in this area, and I get a lot of just life satisfaction from that. I'm actually one of 9 siblings, so I'm right in the middle. I'm number 4.
I'm
and they
number
don't.
4 too.
You are.
Oh, yeah. But just a 4.
Oh, okay. So you're the youngest. I'm a middle
the
child.
final product. They had to do
Yes.
some revisions
There
to
you
get the
go.
perfect draft.
Yeah.
I came eventually.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and not all of my siblings, but most of them live around this area, and so it's just really great being able. I actually lived away from this area for many, many years and came back in 2018, and so it's been really great just being able to be here. And I love planting bulbs, and I have this little old-fashioned house in downtown Rogers that I love, and cats, and I like all the going hiking and getting out in nature here in Northwest Arkansas. There's so many beautiful places. Yeah, that's really, I love to travel. I haven't done it as much in the last few years, like after COVID and all that. But I would love to do more. We've taken her, I've been with my kids in China and Philippines and all different places. So I'd love to do more of that in the future. But yeah, I derive a lot of meaning from that. And I'm not just a midwife for sure. I think I get a lot of meaning. I'm very fortunate that my day job is also, a very meaningful part of my life too, because I know that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you kind of have your day job and then you have your other thing that you do that is really more your purpose. But I mean, it definitely overlaps a lot. I mean, sure, there's days I don't feel like going to work either, but it is really good. I mean, really, labor is a metaphor for life, right?
Yeah.
We should have fewer sports metaphors and more labor metaphors. So many people have had a baby. But like right when you think you can't do it anymore is when you're about to do it, right? Being able to find the people you trust and lean on them. The hardest hour is just before you give birth to something wonderful. It's very, very meaningful.
And there's all these metaphors, but then as far as for what are just life lessons that you've learned through all these births you've seen, like wisdom that you could pass on, they could range from any sort of realm of emotional experience and physical experience or spiritual, whatever.
Yeah. Well, if someone says they're about to have a baby, they are, right? Let's start with that one. That you really listen to people. I think one of the biggest things that nursing in general can teach you is that you meet people where they are in their circumstances, that it's not really about me and what I think should happen. And you really meet people in their circumstances, without judgment, without trying to change their mind. It's really a gift to be able to do that. And it's an ongoing process, like learning how to do that. I think there's so many things that divide us, in this day and age. And it really is great to sometimes you just meet someone in their world where they are, and you don't have to bring your world into it, What else? I would say just things to, the people there's, what's really important in life. You love the God in people, that you see in people every day. And I think that there's so many things that we walk past every day that are so miraculous, I mean, like my bulbs. It looks like it's an onion dead, and life comes up out of that. And there's so many miraculous things about birth and things that you see it all the time. And when you really think about it, it's truly amazing. And I think also the main thing is that everyone has their own story. I mean, you really have to love people to have this job.
I can imagine.
And I mean, sometimes people are so weird and so funny, and those are the stories you remember too.
Uh,
And sometimes they're heartbreaking, but it's just that we're all so much more similar than
mm,
not, um, and that just people are unendingly interesting. Everyone
mhm,
has a story,
yeah.
and it is really amazing to be in that intimate and right in the middle of the story, you know?
Uh,
Sometimes
yeah.
I think you're a midwife because 'cause you're really kinda curious and wanna be in other people's business. Get to
Yeah.
know what makes them tick.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. We had our own interesting stuff too. Like Alexis put me in charge, which was probably a mistake, of the birth playlist for the
Uh-huh.
first birth.
Yeah.
And I had everything from, the Enya type things to Eye of the Tiger. And because it's like, you got to get hyped. And I remember
Yeah.
distinctly that song, Eye of the Tiger, came on as they were making her go up and down the stairs. And so it just felt so fitting. Like she
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
in the gym, like, we're gonna get this baby out. And and then second birth, our daughter, it was funny because we just had Alexis' parents over for dinner. They left, and I was explaining to Alexis why that song "Kids in America" by Kim Wilde is like an old 80s song, why it was such a great song, just
Yeah.
musically and
Yeah.
everything. And she was just not paying attention to me. And I'm like, what's up? Like, these are important thoughts here. Don't you
Yeah.
understand? And she was
Yeah.
like, I think I'm about to give birth. And so we had to call her parents back to get our other kid to
Yeah.
take him and fill up the pool really fast, not having the nozzle connected.
Oh, I didn't
And
even know that you did.
yeah,
I
because
was saying that because of a couple births recently, then they didn't have
well,
you know?
that happened. I had to do buckets, just fill it
Uh-huh.
up in the tub, and then we ran out of hot water. I
Yeah.
can't remember what we did after that.
Probably pots of water on the stove. That's
Yeah,
usually the go-to.
something like that.
Mhm.
And I want to say it was maybe from the point where she said, "I think I'm gonna give birth," to her parents came and picked up our kid, to y'all got there and there was a baby within something like 2 hours. It
It was
was
pretty quick.
fast.
Yeah.
And whereas first labor was, I don't remember,
Yeah.
14 hours, something like that.
Yeah, that second one will
And
take you by surprise. The first one paves the way.
yeah, yeah. So that was just, I wouldn't say, I was gonna say quick and easy.
Yeah.
I'm sure she would say differently.
Yeah.
And it's really fun in a way, but also interesting to have the midwives as a
Mhm.
part of that experience. And because both you and Latara, who'd helped with the first birth, were there,
Yeah.
and you're just at such different seasons in life. And I think there's something about having a daughter that's different than having a boy when
Uh-huh.
when you're a dad. Because at the first birth too, I think I was so hyped up on adrenaline that I was very not emotionally present almost,
Mhm.
because I was just trying to make sure, like, is the baby okay? Is she okay? Like, is everything
Yeah.
all right? And always felt weird about that, of how emotionally distant I was at the birth. And and so and then just having a daughter, it's like, there's the daddy daughter
Mhm.
thing, and knowing that through the whole process. And I was at a weird point in life where I just hadn't felt much of anything for a while. And there were a lot of life
Mhm.
scenarios going on. And so I was really scared of just not being emotionally present
Mhm.
at Karis's birth, our daughter. And so I was like really determined to be there. And then there was the weird part of, like, I'd taken a couple shots of whiskey because I was just like, I want to loosen up. And then y'all were like, "Are you okay?" Because, like, you've had some alcohol. And I was like, "Oh, this is awkward." And but it was such a wild experience of, I don't. It wasn't just the alcohol, but like being present for this human coming in. And it really opened up a new chapter, like emotional
Mhm.
chapter of life for me, to be
Mhm.
like, wow, this is um, a new creature that I have
Yeah.
to bring up and love and care for and show the way in the world. And so it was like all the things that I expected from the first one. Not that all, like, I'm sure I can explain it to him someday. It sounds bad, like I
Yeah.
wasn't there for you, but I'm here for her.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not
it's
quite like
your
that.
first
But
time too. So
yeah,
yeah.
so just all the like manifold experiences and things that you learn, and trying to just, hey, let's move forward with life and figure out how to live the most vibrant life and find meaning. That's kind of the whole purpose of interviewing people like this, is finding those common threads of how people find meaning in life. And with that, do you have like a practical challenge that you would give people? It doesn't have to be necessarily midwifery related. Well, I mean, obviously not midwifery related, but it could be motherly related perhaps, or just something that you feel like would be a nice thing for people to do that would help them become a more loving person.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say, going back to your birth, the one thing I really remember about that is your dog.
Yeah.
You had the best dog. That dog like laid in the
He's
corner
super chill.
and just like hung out and watched.
No
It
help
was
at
so
all,
funny.
but he was just there.
He was there, just there. He's a good doula dog.
Yeah, he's a good dog.
I think, I don't know, take care of the women in your life. I mean, we hear a lot about how to decrease infant mortality and, take care of the babies. And I mean, that's great too. But really, if you really want to take care of the babies and the children, you always take care of the women. That, and I think just trusting yourself, like especially as a mom. I mean, I first started having children. My oldest is 22. So, gosh, you see a lot of things come and go, and at the end of the day, then you have to be able to trust your own instincts and your own, what you feel like is going to be the best thing for your family and for your child. And there's a lot of fads in women's health and I mean, some good and, meaningful changes are made, but there's a lot of things that come and go. But just being able to trust your own instincts is really important. And I think as far as a practical thing goes, for myself in this season is trying to kind of take a dose of my own medicine, not just telling other people what to do, like how to manage their health or whatever, but making sure that I'm putting that practice in my life too. And I always do, like my church does a morning prayer, and I've tried to do that in the morning and just having that, kind of spiritual touchstone every morning and, time to calm and breathe and, connect with God has been really important too.
Yeah. So spoil the women in your life.
Yes.
And take that time.
Connect with God.
Yeah. Well, we'll say for spoil your woman, how about you got to go you get her a massage or something, go get her a favorite drink. That's the practical application.
Let her sleep.
Yeah.
Man.
Let her sleep. Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah. And let her have time by herself. Yeah. Just to be who she is without children.
Sometimes we'll go out of town for the weddings that we do the pictures and videos for, and I'll wake up. We'll have to do an overnight, and I'll wake up in the morning thinking, oh, let's go out and do something. But then I'll think, no, she just wants to sleep now that the kids aren't here.
Especially when the kids are little. Yeah. I'm kind of in a different phase in life now, but yeah, that. And then it's so funny because I remember I would just want some space away from the kids. And then when I would get it, like I'd be great for a few hours and then I'd miss the kids. And I want to, and just that I want to be with them all the time, but I want to be alone too. So yeah.
Yeah. And just any last thoughts or things you want to say?
I'm excited for birth in Northwest Arkansas. I think we've got a lot of good things happening and things changing, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your service to both personally and of helping with our kids and just to the community. It's very appreciated and excited to see where your practice goes. And again, old product placement, had the old Seed Lip Spice 94.
Yes.
Pretty tasty.
You can drink on call.
Yeah.
I'm not on call right now.
Yeah. Or in the morning. So
right.
Thanks for coming, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Thank you.